So in this video, we're going to talk about emotional eating. You know that emotional eating, that binge eating, that where we can't stop, where we go crazy. Surgery is just one tool. It's time to put the other tools in the toolbox because it's your body, your health, your life. This video is done a little bit different. It's in a podcast type format. Put on your headphones. I hope you'll stick around. It is a little bit lengthy. I do talk about what is emotional eating, what is the difference between physical hunger and mental hunger, and then what can we do about it? If you're someone that suffers through binge eating, emotional eating, I hope you'll find some value in this video and then you'll stick around to the end. Enjoy. So let's be honest. How many of you are victim to emotional eating? I mean that eating where it just overcomes you. You become this, and I don't mean this term in a derogatory way, but you just become this crazy person. You can't you can't stop. Like you keep going back to the fridge, or you keep telling yourself, okay, one more bite. And then you find yourself 15 bites later. Um, it's just that overwhelming feeling that no matter what you do, it just never seems to end until you get actually sick. And then I've been at times in my life where I've been sick and I'm still doing it. So that's the type of emotional eating I'm talking about, is when something is going on, something gets triggered, and you find yourself just not being able to find any kind of control. So usually something is upsetting us. We start craving and eating foods that we are determined and we know are pretty much not healthy for us. Usually we're grabbing for the sugar or the unhealthy fats, the kind of refined carbs, the comfort foods. Usually it's not for broccoli. Usually it's not for a steak. Craving is so huge that we simply are drawn to it. We have to do it. We don't always eat just to satisfy physical hunger either. Many of us turn to food for just comfort, love, even stress relief, or even sometimes to reward ourselves. I just want to take a moment and just tell a story of mine. This is a long, 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 long time ago, but it's such a vivid memory, and it actually kind of freaks me out a little bit when I think about it. But it was a Halloween night. I was home alone in my house and I was prepared to give out candy. And I had bought the kind of candy that I actually like. I've learned over the years not to buy Halloween candy that I like. But it was those little mini chocolate bites. So it was like a chocolate bar, but a bite-sized chocolate bar. And I remember I had a lot because usually, typically, where I lived at that time, I had a lot of kids come to the door. And I remember for whatever reason, I think it was snowing that year, or it was blizzarding, or kids just weren't coming to the door. So I ended up having all this candy. And I remember just starting with one and ending almost like in a coma, ending in this food coma, but like this, like I was transported into some kind of other dimension. I ate it all. I ate them all. I was sick, 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 and still grabbing for it. I couldn't. Oh, oh, just thinking about it. Anyhow, have you had one of those situations where it's just so out of control that you think, "Oh my gosh, I'm never gonna get control of this." So, emotional eating is using food to make yourself feel better. It's typically filling emotional needs rather than your stomach. Unfortunately, emotional eating does not fix emotional problems. I think most of us know that. But when we're in the moment, it doesn't feel like it. In fact, it usually makes us feel worse. So, typically, if we're emotionally eating, we feel some guilt or shame afterwards. And it's not really only the original emotional issue that remains, it's usually compounded with other emotions. Uh, even if you are self aware and you know which emotion triggered you, typically after one of these kind of emotional eating situations or these binging situations, usually we we have compounded that original emotional issue. And then the guilt gets piled on to the other guilt. And we just feel so super guilty for overeating. So just ask yourself, are you an emotional eater? Do you eat more than typically when you feel really stressed? Do you eat when you're not hungry? Or even do you keep eating when you're super full? Do you eat to feel better, like either to calm yourself, soothe yourself? Do you eat typically when you're sad or mad or bored or anxious or even happy? Or maybe a combination of those. Do you find that you eat more in that kind of state when those emotions are rising up? Do you reward yourself with food? I know I do. I typically would reward myself with food. If I did a good job or if I did something that, was worth of achieving or approval, then I used to reward myself with food. Um, and then for some of us, food makes us feel safe. It's like our best friend, or a really good friend, or even a loved one. It doesn't talk back to you, even though it kind of does, right? It kind of does talk back to you after. But at the time, like it soothes us. It's comforting. It's something that we can count on. That typically happens as well as an emotional eater. And then there's times where we just feel powerless and just like literally out of control with food. So those are just some questions to ask yourself. Kind of gives an indication that you might be an emotional eater if you're answering more of an yes to some of them. Now, there are 4 strong reasons why we emotionally eat. One, when you eat, you psychologically feel more safe and sound, even if that's subconsciously. Since food is necessary for survival, and in our past, like not typically our past, but our ancestral past, there wasn't always easy access to food. So for some of us, even, I know I had a really good friend that explained this to me once that she, as an adult, would buy lots and lots of food, like overbuy beyond kind of stockpiling. It was just buying all these things, and she would have every pantry, every uh, storage container just filled with food. And I remember asking her, like, what's going on? And she said she finally recognized that when she was young, she grew up in a very poor household. Food was not easily accessible, if not at all. And so that just compounds as a child, right? You didn't have control over that. And so she found that as an adult, she just feels like she never wants to get to that state again of being super scared of not knowing when your next meal was. She just completely stockpiled food just to kind of, in a way, feel like I'm ready if that happens again. Another reason is there is a strong emotional connection when being fed and feeling loved. I know this is kind of obvious, but really think about it. For many of us, celebrations is around food, holidays is around food, birthdays is usually around food. So and typically when we're celebrating, we're with people that we love and we feel supported around, or we enjoy their company. And so you can see where being fed kind of correlates with feeling loved or supported or part of a community or part of. Another reason is when you chew, you actually get rid of negative energy surplus. But that's short term, but that is a biological, physiological situation that when you chew, you are getting rid of negative energy. And then the biggest reason probably is sugars or refined carbs have the ability to put your body into a drugged kind of state because they help to release dopamine, which is a hormone of happiness, feeling good. So there is many reasons for eating when you're feeling negative emotions, because we want that feeling of feeling good. No one wants to feel, no one chooses to feel bad. There's a reason that we want to feel drugged. And a lot of times we use food and sugars and carbs and the bad fats really lead to that because it can give you that instant high, really. So those are just some reasons why we emotionally eat. Now, looking at the emotional eating cycle, it is really a cycle. It's a roller coaster. It's you feel guilty and powerless over food, right? So you ate something bad, you feel guilty and powerless. Then something again happens and it upsets you even more. Then you feel this overwhelming urge to eat, fill that void, avoid the negative feelings, and then you eat more even when you know you should. And it's just a cycle and it just continues. The problem lies, of course, in our emotional eating cycle is that all negative consequences of emotional eating just kind of perpetuates the cycle. First of all, emotional eating usually happens when you aren't even hungry for real. It happens when you're upset. It's a great distraction from your feelings. If you're upset often, it can even go so far as you don't distinguish between emotional and real hunger anymore. It gets to the point where you can't even tell the difference. That means you eat much more than you should. So emotional hunger can be super powerful. So it's easy to mistake it for physical hunger, but there are clues you can look for to help you tell the difference between physical and emotional hunger. You just might have to be a little bit more reflective. Take a breath. When you're in that state and you're reaching for something to eat, ask yourself, is this emotional hunger or is this physical hunger? And some of the ways we can tell is emotional hunger usually comes on pretty suddenly. Physical hunger usually is more gradual. Emotional hunger feels like it needs to be satisfied instantly. Like, oh my God, it's like we gotta figure it out now. I'm so hungry now. I gotta fill and feed myself now. Whereas physical hunger, typically you can wait. You're not so crazy thinking I gotta eat right now. Emotional hunger, typically you are craving specific comfort foods. You know, if you're emotionally hungry, you're probably not craving broccoli or spinach or a salad. And maybe you are, but typically you're craving those specific comfort foods that really are your own comfort foods. And then physical hunger is if you're super, like if you're actually physically hungry, biologically hungry, you're open to options. You know, a lot of things sound good. It's not just that cake that your mind is fixated on. It's not just that ice cream tub in the freezer that you're fixated on. You're open to like, oh yeah, a salad does sound good, or maybe I'll have a steak tonight. Like things start to sound okay, and you actually are hungry and craving a lot of things versus just that specific craving. Another way to tell if it's emotional hunger is even on a full stomach, you're not satisfied. You're still like, oh, I want something else. I'm still hungry. Oh, even when you know you're full, even when you know you've eaten the portion that you're supposed to eat. And then when you're physically hungry, you typically stop when you're full. Like you just know that you're full and you're not really craving or wanting anymore. Another way to tell if you're emotionally hungry or physically hungry is emotional. Typically, after you're done, you have feelings that are triggered like guilt, powerlessness, and shame. And then physically hungry, after you don't feel bad about yourself after eating. You know that you needed that fuel. You feel good. You don't typically feel any guilt or shame. And the real reason for emotional eating is that I'm just going to be honest with you, like crappy food is what calms you down the best, really, right? As mentioned, it's the dopamine release into your system, but that also means an intake of like typically more additional sugar and unhealthy fats. So the more unhealthy fats and sugars you eat, the more your body gets used to it and addicted to it. It's like a drug. They say that sugar is like cocaine. The more you have it, the more you crave it, the more you need it, and your body just it is a true addiction. Sugar is a true addiction. So the more you can get rid of that, the sugars, the refined carbs, the unhealthy fats, the chemicals, the preservatives, those things are not nutritional value. And they're typically in our junk food. They're typically in our comfort foods. They're typically what we crave. So the more you add that to your body, the more you're getting high, the more you're wanting it, and the more you're going to need it. So in the long term, that means that even small emotional issues can make you eat huge amounts of unhealthy sugars and fats because you just need more and more and more and more. And as you know, too much unhealthy foods lead to many potential health issues. And as morbid as this sounds, we are just digging ourselves into a grave with a spoon. Think about that. Take a moment and think about that. The more we're feeding to this addiction, the more we're adding these things to our body. And it's not just the food that's making us feel bad, it's all the reactions from it. It's the increase of cortisol, the stress. It is the biological lack of nutrients. It is adding more chemicals and toxins to our body. It's all of that. We are digging ourselves a grave with our own spoon and fork. Slowly and surely, we're digging that grave. The strongest food cravings usually occur when you are emotionally upset and weak, but that is how things unfortunately are. Life sucks sometimes. It really does. We know that we can't avoid that. And, some of the most emotionally tough situations may cause you to emotionally overeat. So when you find yourself in these tough situations, some of these you can't avoid. You have to go through it. I'm not saying it's easy, but some of these situations, when they happen, you just have to take a breath. You have to observe that you're going through it. You have to give yourself grace, and you really have to look at your eating habits very closely. So these things, if they're happening in your life, they're probably triggering emotional eating. So that could be conflicts and fights, be it with your spouse, your partner, your family, friends, any insecurities, past or present, that feelings of being inferior, work stress, deadlines, uncontrolled stress, that chronic stress in your life, health issues, your own or maybe even your loved ones, financial problems, boredom, loneliness, the unknown, depression, confusion, fatigue, resentment, travel, even if it's for a good thing, travel can be very triggering for people, business or personal, social pressure, social situations, those small daily irritations can build up, loss, grief, changes in life, and just even being caught up in nostalgia. So these are just things to really keep an eye out when they're happening. You have to be very self-reflective. So number one, we need to identify our emotional triggers. So I know you want me to say there's a trick, there's an easy way, there's a hack. How can we stop our emotional eating? You know, I've always been super honest with you. We have to do the work. We have to always look at what is the root cause of those emotional triggers. What are the situations, the places, the feelings that are making us reach for that comfort food? It's usually linked to unpleasant feelings, but like I said, it can also be triggered by positive emotions, such as rewarding yourself for achieving a goal or celebrating a holiday or a happy event. So you have to identify your emotional triggers. You have to get down to the root cause. Then suggestions are to keep an emotional eating diary, not the portion. Like, I know that we've had people in the past, coaches, videos, people telling us, oh, write down what you eat, keep a food diary. I'm talking about an emotional eating diary. It's about getting really specific. It's not even so much about the food. It's about tracking the food, but what mood? What are you craving? Why are you craving it? Like, what mood are you going through when you want that food? Write it all down. Like, what did you eat? What did you want to eat? What happened to you to upset you? How did you feel before and after? Um, like, what were you feeling when you were eating? Were you like gorging it in? Were you taking it slow? How you felt afterward? And then ask yourself, why are you eating? These are just things, not judgment, not shame, not guilt, just writing it down, just blurting it out, writing it down, so that you can look at it. And then, really be diligent about it, and for a determined amount of time. Like, yeah, you can do it for a day. And I know this takes work and it's a lot of like mind thinking, and sometimes we forget, but try to make it as easy as possible. It could be a physical diary, it could be on your phone, it could be doing like a real quick audio video into your phone and save that. Just try to do it more than a day. You really need to look for patterns. So a week, a couple days for sure, just to see a determined amount of time to see if there's a pattern happening. 3, find other ways to feed your feelings. It's just not enough to understand just the cycle of emotional eating. You need to understand the triggers. That's the big first step, is understanding the triggers. And then you got to find alternatives to food, so that you can turn to something else versus food for emotional fulfillment. So that could be anything, a bunch of things. Like, you need to think about what works for you. Here's some ideas. If you're depressed or lonely, call someone who always makes you feel better. Don't call the person, a loved one or not, that doesn't make you feel good. Call a person that makes you feel better. If you have a pet, play with your pet. Pet therapy is awesome. Look at a favorite photo or a cherished memento. Go find something that makes you feel good. If you're anxious, get rid of that, expend that nervous energy, like dancing to your favorite song. Like, just do it. Get rid of the energy. If that means moving, walking, exercising, whatever works for you. It doesn't have to be a full workout. It's just getting rid of that energy. If you're exhausted, really try to treat yourself. This is where self-care comes in. Take a bath, light some candles, wrap yourself in a warm blanket. If humor helps you, do that. Like, just find something that, if you're exhausted, it helps you to decrease the stress, so that, of course, we can have good sleeping, because sleep will help to recover issues in our body. So we need to make sure that we're not stressed. And then if you're bored, which boredom for me and eating goes hand in hand. I eat more out of boredom, I think, than anything. So I need to really, reach for a good book, watch a comedy show, go outdoors. Outdoors in nature is always good. But always turn to an activity you enjoy. If that's a hobby, do something that you can fill your time with, and fill it not with food. So then we have to pause when cravings hit and check in with yourself. Now that's hard. That is total hard, because when you're in that crazy moment, it feels unbearable. And there's this unbearable tension that demands to be fed. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? It just demands it. It's this voice in your head. It's the addiction, right? And they want it right now. So you have to really like pause. You have to be super diligent with yourself. Because you've got a lot of baggage when it comes to emotional eating. You've tried to resist in the past and you've failed. You believe that your willpower just isn't up to snuff. But the truth is, you have more power over your cravings than you think. You just have to be diligent. Don't succumb. So, can you put off that eating for 5 minutes or even just 1 minute? Don't tell yourself that you can't give in to the craving. Like, just remember, the forbidden is extremely tempting. So you can't go down that road of like, I can't, I can't, I can't. Just take a breath, take a minute, take 5 minutes, try to build on that. Just tell yourself to wait, just wait. And then while you're waiting, check in with yourself. How are you feeling? What's going on emotionally? Even if you end up eating, you'll have a better understanding of why you did it. And this can help you set yourself up for a different response next time. And then go back to your diary. What's happening? What's happening right now? You have to be your own kind of therapist in this. I can't walk you through it. Other people can't walk you through your food journey, your emotional eating. They can give you suggestions, they can give you tips and tricks, but you are the one living it. I think we can all relate to each other, but you're the one living it and you're the one that's going to have to solve it. And then you're going to have to learn to accept your feelings, even the bad ones. Um, we all know by now that we have to go through it. I know that's scary and super scary for certain things, and you might have to ask for professional help, or you might have to build yourself a plan, but we have to go through it. We have to accept our feelings because life doesn't give us always roses. We have to be able to navigate the ups and downs. So, while it may seem that the core problem is that you feel you're powerless over food and emotional eating, but actually, emotional eating stems from feeling powerless over your emotions. You don't feel capable of dealing with your feelings head on, so you avoid them with food. Just recognize that. Allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable can be super scary. I get that. It's like if you open up the box, oh my God, here they come, and you don't know what to do. But the truth is, if we keep suppressing and pushing those emotions down, even the good ones, the most painful and difficult feelings will subside quickly. But if we keep doing it and keep doing it, we're going to eventually lose our power to control anything. And it will come bubbling up. Trust me, it will come bubbling up. And to do this, you need to become mindful and learn how to stay connected to your moment to moment emotional experience. You need to go through it. You can't go over it, can't go around it, can't go under it. The quickest way to the other side is going through it. The quickest way to the other side is going through it. So the longer you avoid it, the longer you go around it, the longer you try to just do a little bit and not do the whole thing, the longer it's going to stick around. And it's just going to end up getting out of control and getting worse. So the more you can stay in the moment, the more you can go through it, the more you are self-aware. This helps you to rein in the stress and repair those emotional problems once and for all. And then eventually that emotional eating triggers will start to subside. Another way to handle it is to practice mindful eating. What do I mean by that? It's just being super mindful of what you're doing. How many times, I'm really bad for this, I'll sit in front of a TV and just shovel it in, and I'll just be like, I don't even remember eating. So, mindful eating is being super slow, taking breaths, describe in your mind, or if you're with someone else, describe the texture, the color, the taste, the smell. Just take your time. How does it make your body feel? It's just being super mindful about every bite you take, savor every bite. I know this sounds kind of funny. We're not used to this, right? But it's super important to be slow or slower because it triggers your body's fullness, like the body's fullness signal to reach the brain. So the brain, after a certain amount of time, will say, okay, yeah, you're full. Also, some of us who have restrictions, um, we eat so fast that we skip over the restriction. And next thing we know, we're just in super pain. So you have to be super careful because what happens is you're eating so fast and you're not slowing down, you're not being mindful that your body, your brain can't catch up. And so one or two things will happen is that you'll just shovel all this food into your body and then all of a sudden it will tell you to stop because you'll get sick, or you're not going to give it enough time where your brain said, okay, yeah, I'm full. And usually that's typically 20 minutes for people. Time yourself. See how fast you eat your meal. Like, really be honest with yourself. Audit yourself. Is it 1 minute? Is it 2 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? If you can eat your meal and wait 20 minutes and then decide, I want to eat something else, that would be the best thing to do. I audited myself once. I did it over a week just to see how fast I eat my meals, and I was super surprised. In reality, I was eating it way faster than I thought I was doing it. And it just, it's just awareness to see, being truthful with yourself. How fast am I eating? Can I slow down here? And can I at least make it to 20 minutes. And then lastly, we really need to support ourselves with healthy lifestyle habits. So all these things, they are continually being expressed in anything that we talk about. But we just need to remind ourselves, sleep, the quality of sleep is super important. That helps. These are things that if we can really figure out good strategies in these areas, that in turn will help with the emotional eating. So sleep, quality of sleep. Are you getting enough sleep? What is the sleep like? How can you change that? Movement. I'm not saying you have to go to the gym. I have to work on this too. I'm either all or nothing. I'm either running a triathlon or I'm doing nothing. So I need to remind myself that movement is good. I'm not talking about weight loss. I'm talking about getting air into your lungs. Talking about stretching your muscles. I'm talking about moving your joints. Come on, we're all intelligent people. We know that movement is good, and it does not have to be the gym. It does not have to be 4 hours of exercise. It can mean a walk down the street. It means doing double what you did yesterday. So if all you did was walk to your bedroom yesterday, then do it twice. If it means you went to go get your mail, do it twice. Go for a walk for 5 minutes, try 10 minutes. Just movement, movement. Self-care, we talked about that. So many of us, especially women, we say, yeah, we tell our best friends, you need to take care of yourself. You need to have a self-care plan. But we don't do it for ourselves. We don't follow up with ourselves. We need to have a plan and we need to follow through. And these need to be things that nourish us, not just in the food area. It needs to nourish our body in other areas as well. And then quality of food is super, super important. We need to focus on nutrition, not convenience. And there are foods out there that actually fight stress. Those should be included in our diet. We need to find coping strategies. If that means we need to ask for help, professional help, then we need to do that. We need to do that. We need to connect, get community, and feel supported. So, just by you taking this course, you are part of a community that's really working on themselves. But find other communities, be it physical, be it virtual, find the support, stay connected. We all are going through these things. We don't have to go at it alone. We can build each other up and we can ask each other, what are some tips and strategies? What are you doing? Um, Not in a way that we're asking for them to cure us. We're asking them to support us so that we can support ourselves. And then it's super important to know what your body needs and don't ignore that. There's only so much time we have in this body. If we keep ignoring what it actually needs and do that, time is going to run out. And then, you know me, I'm a big believer in being super self aware and actually taking action. You'll hear me say this a lot, but and I forget who actually said it, but transformation is about information and taking action. You need both those parts to make transformation. So if you want to have a good outcome, you can take all the information in as much as you want, but if you don't take action, you're never going to get the results or the transformation. It's in the action that moves us forward. So that is about emotional eating. I know that this isn't like rocket science. It's probably things you've heard before. It's all about being intentional, mindful, understanding that it's not about the food. It's about our emotions. It's about what's getting triggered and how it's super important to get at the root cause of those emotions, identify them, go through them, find alternatives to fill the void that we're never going to fill with food, and get to the other side. Take good care of ourselves and know that if we work through the problem, we work through the emotions, we identify the triggers, we get to the other side, and we get to feel the transformation and the results that we are seeking. You got this. I believe in you. If you got value in this video, please give it a thumbs up. Have the best day. Take care. Be well.